poor girl sat at the wrong table on a blind date, never knowing he was a millionaire who'd love her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bells so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. It was a chilly Friday evening in New York City, the kind of evening when the streets glowed under neon lights and the sound of car horns mixed with laughter from nearby cafes. Inside a lavish restaurant uptown, a young woman pushed open the glass door with trembling hands. Her name was Lily, and to most people she was just another ordinary girl, working 2 jobs to pay rent on her tiny studio apartment in Queens. But tonight, she had taken a chance. Her best friend had set her up on a blind date, assuring her that maybe, just maybe, this could be the one that would change her life. Lily clutched her thrift store handbag tightly, her palms damp from nerves. She smoothed the wrinkles of her second-hand dress and glanced around at the shimmering chandeliers, the waiters in crisp uniforms, the couples sipping wine as though they belonged to a different universe. She swallowed hard. Every detail screamed luxury, a world that had never been meant for her. Her phone buzzed. A text from her friend. Table 7. He is waiting for you. Do not mess this up. Taking a deep breath, Lily scanned the rows of polished tables, counting under her breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then she saw it. Table 7, tucked near the window, where a man in a sharp black suit sat with a glass of water, scrolling on his phone. Without hesitation, Lily walked over, her heels tapping nervously against the marble floor. Hi. Sorry I am late, she whispered, sliding into the chair across from him. The man looked up, surprised. His eyes, a piercing shade of blue, studied her for a moment, before softening. He tucked his phone away and smiled faintly. No worries, I have not been waiting long. Lily exhaled in relief. So far, so good. She opened the menu, pretending to study the dishes, though the numbers on the right side made her chest tighten. $40 for pasta. 55 for steak. She quickly flipped the page, hoping he would not notice her panic. Meanwhile, the man leaned back in his chair, curiosity sparking in his gaze. He had seen many women sit across from him in expensive restaurants, dressed in designer gowns and dripping with confidence. But this girl? She was different. Her nervous laugh, her trembling fingers, her honesty written in every small movement, it was almost disarming. So, Lily, right? He asked, tilting his head. Yes, she said, her cheeks warming. And you must be Daniel? He hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. Yes, Daniel. Lily had no idea that his real name was Ethan Cole, heir to one of the largest investment firms in Manhattan. She had no idea that his net worth was in the hundreds of millions, or that his photograph often appeared in business magazines. To her, he was just Daniel, her blind date. And Ethan, for reasons even he could not explain yet, decided not to correct her. As the waiter approached, Lily ordered the cheapest thing she could find, just a small salad and water. Ethan raised an eyebrow, but said nothing, ordering a glass of wine for himself. So, what do you do? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. I work in finance, he replied vaguely, sipping his drink. But I would rather hear about you. What do you do, Lily? Her lips pressed together for a moment. I work part-time at a coffee shop and also take some evening classes in graphic design. It is nothing fancy. Her honesty struck him. Most women who came into his world tried too hard, always selling an image, always angling for attention. But Lily? She was raw, unpolished, and utterly real. Ethan found himself leaning in, listening more intently than he had in months. Across the restaurant, laughter and clinking glasses echoed, but at that small table, time slowed. Lily thought she was sitting across from an ordinary man on an ordinary blind date. Ethan knew better. He could already feel the pull of something unusual, something he had not expected when he walked into this restaurant tonight. And just like that, a simple mistake sitting at the wrong table had begun to change both of their lives forever. The dinner stretched on longer than Lily expected. At first, she could hardly keep her hands from shaking. She was terrified of saying something foolish, of exposing how out of place she felt in a restaurant where a single plate cost more than her weekly groceries. Yet the man across from her, Ethan, though she only knew him as Daniel, had a way of softening the sharp edges of her fear. He asked questions, not the shallow ones she usually heard, but questions that made her feel seen. "What inspires your designs?" he asked, leaning forward, his elbows resting casually on the table. Lily hesitated, her fork hovering above the untouched salad. "Honestly, everyday life. Things most people overlook. The way light falls across a cracked sidewalk. A stranger's smile when they think no one is watching. I sketch those moments because they remind me that beauty can exist in the smallest places." Her eyes flicked up nervously, waiting for him to laugh. Most people dismissed her sketches as childish doodles, scraps not worth keeping. But Ethan's expression did not shift into mockery. Instead, his gaze softened. "I would like to see them sometime," he said simply. Her lips parted in surprise. You really would?" "Of course. Beauty is not just what hangs in galleries. Sometimes the most honest art never reaches a frame." Something inside Lily warmed at his words. It had been so long since anyone spoke to her without judgment, without measuring her worth in dollars or status. For the first time that night, she smiled, not the nervous, practiced smile she often wore, but a real one that reached her eyes. As the evening unfolded, the clatter of silverware and low hum of conversation surrounded them. But at their table, a strange intimacy began to take root. Ethan found himself laughing, genuinely laughing, at her dry humor. She teased him about the way he swirled his wine, as if he were in a commercial. He countered with a playful remark about her choosing the smallest salad on the menu. She blushed, admitting that fancy dining was not part of her world. "You know," she confessed quietly, "I almost did not come tonight. I thought, what if he thinks I am not good enough?" Her words sliced through Ethan like a knife. He had heard similar sentiments before, usually from people desperate to impress him. But with Lily, it was different. She was not angling for his validation. She was admitting a fear that lived inside her every day. He wanted to tell her that she was already more than enough, that her presence alone had shifted something in his chest. But instead, he held back, afraid that if he revealed too much, the fragile connection between them might shatter. The night drifted on, and eventually the waiter placed the bill discreetly at the edge of the table. Lily's stomach dropped at the sight of it. She reached for her bag, fumbling with her wallet. "You do not have to," Ethan began. "No," she interrupted quickly, shaking her head. "We should split it. It is only fair." Darai. He watched her place a wrinkled $20 bill on the table with trembling hands. Something about that gesture, the quiet dignity in it, struck him deeper than any act of generosity he had ever witnessed in his glittering world. "All right," he said gently, adding his card to cover the rest. He did not push, did not insist, because he sensed that what mattered was not the money itself, but her determination to stand as an equal. When they finally rose to leave, Lily gathered her courage to thank him. "It was nice meeting you, Daniel. I am sorry again for being late." Ethan wanted to tell her the truth right then. He wanted to say, "You were never late. You were exactly where you were meant to be." But he only smiled. The pleasure was mine. Outside, the cold night air wrapped around them. Lily hugged her coat tighter, shivering slightly as they walked toward the curb. The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement, and for a fleeting moment, Ethan wished he could stop time just to keep her there, walking beside him, before reality intruded. A black car pulled up, sleek and polished, his driver waiting silently. Lily stepped back instinctively, not connecting the dots, assuming it belonged to another diner. "Well," she said, shifting on her feet. "Good night, Daniel." Her voice was soft, uncertain, as if she did not believe she would ever see him again. "Good night, Lily," Ethan replied. His eyes lingered on her as she turned away, disappearing into the crowd of strangers and yellow cabs. And for the first time in years, Ethan Cole, billionaire, businessman, untouchable in every sense, felt something stir inside him that no wealth had ever given, the ache of not wanting to let go. He climbed into the car, but his thoughts remained with her, replaying her nervous smile, her wrinkled $20 bill, her quiet strength. Somewhere deep inside, he already knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The following morning arrived with a gray sky stretched over the city. Lily sat by her small window in Queens, sipping a cup of instant coffee, staring at the steam as if it could tell her the future. She thought about the man from last night, Daniel, with the calm voice and piercing blue eyes. The memory of his words echoed in her mind, especially the way he had listened to her dreams without dismissing them. For a moment, she allowed herself to wonder if she might actually see him again. But reality pressed in quickly. Men like him belong to polished tables, elegant women, and lives far above her reach. Her phone screen remained stubbornly blank. No call. No message. She sighed, slipping it back into her bag before hurrying out to catch the subway. Across the city, Ethan Cole sat in his glass office high above Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out on a skyline that seemed endless, but his thoughts were caught on one girl who had walked away into the night. His assistant rattled off numbers, meetings, and contracts, but Ethan barely registered a word. He had been raised to never let distractions interfere with business, yet Lily's presence clung to him like the faint trace of perfume on a scarf. By late afternoon, Lily had finished her shift at the coffee shop. Her shoes pinched her feet, and the smell of espresso clung to her apron. She wiped down the counter for the last time that day, only to hear the bell above the door jingle. She looked up, and her heart skipped. There he was, the man she thought she would never see again. Daniel, or Ethan, though she still did not know his real name, stood in the doorway. His tailored coat looked oddly out of place against the peeling paint of the shop's walls, but his smile was steady, directed only at her. "Hi," he said, as though they had parted only minutes ago. "Can I get a black coffee?" Her mouth opened slightly before she found her voice. "Daniel, of course, coming right up." Her hands shook as she prepared the cup. She told herself not to read too much into it, not to hope, but the fact that he had found his way to this shabby corner of the city felt like more than coincidence. When she handed him the steaming paper cup, he did not let the moment slip away. "I was wondering if you might like to take a walk with me after your shift." She blinked, caught off guard. "A walk?" "Yes," he said simply, as if it were the most natural thing. "No fancy restaurants this time. Just the park. Fresh air. Conversation." Her lips curved despite her effort to stay composed. "All right, give me 10 minutes to close up." Later, as they strolled through the nearly empty park, the winter air carried the faint scent of pine and roasted chestnuts from a nearby vendor. Lily shoved her hands into her coat pockets, still unsure why this man, who could easily disappear into a world of power and privilege, wanted to spend time with her. "You really came all the way to my work?" she asked. "I did," he admitted. "I wanted to see you again." Her chest tightened. The words were so straightforward, so unguarded, that for a second she forgot to breathe. They walked past a frozen fountain, their footsteps crunching on the gravel path. Ethan asked about her family, her classes, her dreams. He listened with an attentiveness that made her cheeks warm. In return, he offered little about himself, keeping his answers vague, careful not to let his true identity slip. He wanted her to see him, not the empire behind his name. As the sky darkened, snowflakes began to fall lightly, dusting her hair. She laughed, tilting her head back to catch one on her tongue. Ethan watched her with a gaze he could not disguise. He had attended countless galas, spoken with senators, negotiated with billionaires, but never once had he felt the world tilt the way it did when she smiled under falling snow. When they reached the corner where their paths would separate, she hesitated. "Thank you for tonight, Daniel. I had a really nice time." "So did I," he replied, his voice low. He wanted to reach for her hand, to hold on to something fragile yet powerful growing between them, but he let her walk away. He reminded himself that trust could not be rushed, not with her. Back in her apartment, Lily sank onto her bed, cheeks flushed from the cold, and from something else she dared not name. She whispered to the empty room. He came back. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his silent car, watching the city blur past the windows. For the first time in years, his thoughts were not on stocks, mergers, or profits. They were on a girl who worked at a coffee shop, who carried herself with quiet dignity, and who had no idea that the man she was starting to trust was one of the wealthiest men in New York. And though he had every reason to stay away, Ethan knew he would not. Something had begun the moment she sat at the wrong table, and he was not about to let it slip away. The following week unfolded with a rhythm Lily could hardly comprehend. Each evening after her shifts, Daniel, still hiding his true name, appeared as if drawn by some invisible thread. Sometimes he walked her home with 2 cups of hot chocolate. Other nights he waited outside her design class, carrying an umbrella when rain poured over the sidewalks. He never flaunted wealth, never hinted at the truth, just presented himself as a man who wanted her company. For Lily, it was confusing and intoxicating. She had grown used to men who vanished after one date, or who expected more than she was willing to give. But Daniel was different. He listened. He remembered details. He once brought her a sketchbook after she mentioned hers was nearly full, the leather cover simple but sturdy. She ran her fingers over the pages, as if it were the most precious gift she had ever received. "You did not have to," she murmured when he handed it to her. "I wanted to," he replied softly. "Every artist deserves blank pages waiting for them." His words lingered in her heart long after she closed the sketchbook that night. Still, whispers of doubt gnawed at her. She knew the world she lived, in one where rent consumed her paycheck, and one mistake could topple everything. She feared this fragile connection was too good to last. That fear seemed justified when her best friend Clara pulled her aside one afternoon. Clara had seen her leaving the park with Daniel, laughing as though the world had disappeared. "Lily, you have to be careful," Clara warned. "Guys who look like that, dressed like that, they are not in our league. He is probably just playing with you." Lily's stomach sank. She wanted to defend him, but what did she really know? He never spoke much about his work, always vague, always changing the subject back to her. Doubt whispered louder in her mind, planting seeds of mistrust she could not shake. That evening, as they strolled past the glowing storefronts downtown, Lily decided to confront the unease. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" He glanced at her, reading the seriousness in her tone. "Of course. Why me?" she asked, her breath fogged in the cold air. "You could be with someone polished, someone who belongs in places like that restaurant. I do not understand why you keep showing up for me." Ethan stopped walking. His chest tightened with the weight of her words. He could not tell her the full truth yet. But he also could not let her think she was unworthy. "Because you are real," he said firmly. "You do not pretend. You do not care about appearances. You are honest, and that is rare." "Oh." Her eyes shimmered with something between relief and fear. She wanted to believe him, but the gap between their worlds loomed large. The silence stretched, broken only by the honk of taxis rushing past. Finally, she smiled faintly, though her voice trembled. "I do not know if I can believe that someone like you really sees me." "Then let me prove it," Ethan said quietly. From that night forward, he did everything he could to earn her trust without revealing his fortune. He helped her carry groceries up the stairs to her tiny apartment. He spent Saturday mornings in the cramped coffee shop where she worked, waiting in line like any other customer, just to sit across from her during her break. He even learned the names of her coworkers, greeting them as though he belonged in their modest circle. But for every moment that drew them closer, the secret he carried grew heavier. Each time she laughed at his jokes or sketched quietly while leaning against his shoulder, guilt twisted in his chest. How would she look at him when she discovered he was not Daniel, the quiet man with kind eyes, but Ethan Cole, the millionaire? She had unknowingly stumbled across that fateful night. For now, she believed in the illusion. And for now, he chose to hold on to it, even though he knew the truth had a way of surfacing. One evening, as they sat on a park bench watching the city lights shimmer against the river, Lily whispered, "You make the world feel less heavy, Daniel. I do not know how, but you do." Ethan turned to her, wanting so badly to tell her everything, but instead he only replied, "That is all I ever want to do." She rested her head on his shoulder, unaware that his world, the real one, the glittering empire of wealth and status, was inching closer, threatening to collide with hers. And when it did, neither of them would be able to pretend anymore. Winter deepened, and with it came the weight of unspoken truths. For Lily, the days blurred together in a rhythm of early mornings at the coffee shop, hurried subway rides, and late-night walks with Daniel. Yet something in her heart began to stir with unease. Clara's warning echoed often. Guys like that never stick around. It was during one of those evenings, while she was sketching on the new pages Daniel had given her, that doubt struck hardest. She flipped through her rough drawings, shoes left on subway platforms, children chasing pigeons, reflections in puddles, and paused when she saw one he had admired. She remembered the sincerity in his voice when he told her that even the smallest beauty mattered. But then she remembered how little she knew about him. Where exactly did he work? Why had he never invited her into his world? The next day, Lily decided to push past the silence. They met outside her evening class. And as they walked, she turned to him. "Daniel, you know so much about me, my family, my fears, my dreams, but I barely know you. Why is that?" Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to tell her everything, that his real name was Ethan Cole, that the suit he wore was worth more than her monthly rent, that every day he balanced billion-dollar negotiations while thinking about her laughter. But fear held him back. Fear that she would see him not as the man who carried groceries for her, but as a symbol of the chasm between them. "I guess I like listening to you more than talking about myself," he said gently. She gave a small laugh, but her eyes were troubled. "It feels unbalanced sometimes, like I am opening my whole world to someone who keeps his closed." Her words lingered with him long after he dropped her at her apartment. That night, in his penthouse high above the city, Ethan stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring at the skyline. His reflection looked back at him, polished and powerful, but all he felt was the growing distance between the life he led and the girl he could not let go of. Meanwhile, Lily tried to quiet the storm of doubts. Yet life had a way of forcing truth to the surface. A few days later, Clara arrived at the coffee shop, eyes wide, a magazine in hand. She slapped it onto the counter. On the glossy cover was Ethan Cole, photographed at a charity gala, his name printed boldly across the page. "Lily, this is him," Clara whispered urgently. "This is your Daniel. He is not some guy in finance. He is a millionaire. He runs one of the biggest firms in Manhattan." Lily's heart froze. Her eyes darted across the article, each sentence unraveling the fragile trust she had built. She saw the tuxedo, the glittering ballroom, the smile that was both familiar and foreign. It was him. The man who walked her home with hot chocolate, the man who gave her a sketchbook, the man who swore she was real. And yet he had hidden the truth every single day. That evening, when he appeared outside the shop as he always did, Lily did not smile. She stepped out into the cold, the magazine clutched tightly in her hand. "Why did you lie to me?" she demanded, her voice breaking. Ethan's face paled. "Lily, I wanted to tell you. You let me think you were someone else," she interrupted, her chest heaving. "Do you have any idea how small that makes me feel? I opened up to you. I trusted you. And all this time, you were living in a world I cannot even imagine." Snow began to fall, soft but relentless, like the truth pressing down on them both. Ethan reached for her arm, but she pulled back. "I never meant to hurt you," he said desperately. "I wanted you to see me, not the name, not the money." Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "But that is who you are, and you hid it from me." She turned and walked away, her footsteps crunching against the snow. Ethan stood frozen, his heart pounding as the crowd moved around him. For the first time in years, the man who had everything realized he might have just lost the one thing he truly needed. And as Lily disappeared into the night, the city lights blurred with her tears, leaving her to wonder if trusting him had been the greatest mistake of all. The days that followed were colder than the winter air outside. Lily went through her routine as if on autopilot, pouring lattes, wiping tables, sketching late at night when sleep refused to come. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, Daniel, or Ethan, whichever name truly belonged to him, standing under the falling snow, pleading with her to understand. Clara kept her voice sharp. "You see, I told you men like that cannot be trusted. He had you believing he was one of us, but really he is up there in some penthouse, laughing at how easy it was." Lily bit her tongue, because despite everything, she could not reconcile the image of Ethan, the millionaire, with the man who had carried her grocery bags, who had waited in line for coffee, who had listened to her talk about puddle reflections as if they mattered. She hated herself for missing him, but she could not stop. Meanwhile, across the city, Ethan was unraveling. His board demanded his focus, his calendar filled with meetings, but nothing silenced the echo of her voice. "You hid it from me." He had spent years mastering negotiations, winning battles of power, but he had no strategy for this. For Lily, one evening, as snow piled against the city sidewalks, Ethan found himself back at the coffee shop. The windows glowed warmly from inside, but he did not enter. He stood across the street, watching her move behind the counter, her head bowed, her smile absent. He longed to cross over, to beg her again, but something held him back. For the first time, he realized that love was not something he could simply buy or demand. It was something he had to prove. The chance came sooner than either of them expected. Late one night, Lily left work, clutching her sketchbook close against the bitter wind. The streets were quieter than usual, only the hum of a few passing cars breaking the silence. As she turned a corner, two men stepped out from the shadows, blocking her path. "Hey, sweetheart," one sneered, his eyes flicking to her bag. "Hand it over." Lily froze, her heart hammering in her chest. She took a step back, but the second man moved closer, his hand snatching for her purse. Panic surged through her, and then, out of nowhere, a familiar voice cut through the night. "Leave her alone." "Out, Ethan." He had been a block away, his driver waiting at the curb, when he saw her in danger. Without hesitation, he rushed forward. His suit jacket caught on the wind as he shoved one man back, his eyes blazing with fury. "Do not touch her," he warned, his voice sharp and commanding. The men, startled by his sudden appearance and the strength behind his grip, exchanged a look. One muttered a curse before both bolted down the alley, disappearing into the dark. Lily's knees buckled, but Ethan caught her before she fell, his arms wrapped around her, steady and sure. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently, scanning her face. She shook her head, though tears stung her eyes. I am fine, just scared." He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, his touch trembling. "I will not let anything happen to you. Not now, not ever." For a moment, the world shrank to just the two of them, standing in the cold with her heart racing against his chest. But then reality rushed back. She pulled away, her voice unsteady. "Why were you even here?" "Because I could not stay away," Ethan admitted. His eyes held nothing but truth. "I know I lied, and I hate myself for it. But everything else, every walk, every word, every moment with you, that was real. You have to believe that." Lily's chest tightened. She wanted to scream, to cry, to throw every ounce of betrayal at him. Yet the memory of his hands shielding her, of his voice cutting through the danger, silenced her anger for just a breath. She whispered, "I do not know if I can believe you anymore." Ethan's voice broke as he replied, "Then let me spend the rest of my life proving it." The snow fell heavier around them, blanketing the city in white. Lily turned, clutching her sketchbook as if it were armor, and walked away into the night. Ethan stood still, his breath clouding in the icy air, knowing the fight for her heart had only just begun. The night of the attack stayed burned in Lily's memory. Even after the bruises faded from where the thief had grabbed her wrist, the image of Ethan standing between her and danger refused to leave her mind. She tried to ignore it, telling herself that courage did not erase lies. But every time she replayed the scene, she remembered the look in his eyes, raw, desperate, protective. At the coffee shop, she found herself glancing at the door more often than she wanted to admit. Some part of her expected him to appear, just as he always had, but days passed in silence. Ethan kept his distance, knowing that chasing her too quickly would only drive her further away. Then came the night of the gala. It was a high-profile charity event, covered by reporters and splashed across the news. Ethan had not wanted to attend, but obligations tied him to the glittering hall. Cameras flashed as he walked the carpet, questions shouted about business and investments. Yet his mind was miles away, on a girl sketching unnoticed details of the world in her small apartment. Lily saw his image on the evening news, his name spoken with reverence, his fortune listed as if it defined him. Her heart clenched. That world looked untouchable, unreachable. And still, she remembered the man who carried her groceries, who waited outside her class with an umbrella. Fate had its own plans. 2 days later, their paths collided again. Lily had been hired to serve coffee at a local community fundraiser. She balanced a tray nervously, weaving between tables, when suddenly she froze. At the far end of the room, Ethan stood in conversation with a group of donors. Their eyes met across the space, and for a moment, the noise of the crowd faded into silence. He excused himself immediately, striding toward her. "Lily," he said softly, as though her name itself was a lifeline. Her throat tightened. "You should not be here." "This is exactly where I need to be," he replied. "I cannot keep hiding. I will tell you everything. No more secrets." She wanted to resist, to walk away again, but something in his voice, steady, pleading, rooted her in place. The truth she had been running from was now standing in front of her, refusing to let go. And deep down, Lily knew this was the moment she had feared and longed for all at once. The reveal that would change everything. The fundraiser bustled around them, but Lily felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath her feet. Ethan's voice was steady, yet his eyes betrayed the weight of what he was about to confess. "I should have told you from the very beginning," he said, his tone raw. "My name is not Daniel, it is Ethan Cole. I run Cole Investments. I am the man you saw in those magazines, the one people whisper about. But none of that mattered when I was with you. I wanted you to see me, not my money, not my name, just me." Lily's chest tightened. Every word pressed harder against the wall she had built to protect herself. "Do you have any idea how humiliating it feels?" she whispered. "To sit across from you, pouring out my life, my fears, while you hid yours? I felt like an equal, but all along, I was the poor girl who had no clue who she was talking to." Ethan's jaw clenched. "You were never less. Not for a single moment. I fell for you because you are real, because you are strong, because you see beauty where others do not. That is what I have been chasing, Lily. Not your background. Not your status. You." Her eyes brimmed with tears. She wanted to believe him, but the gap between them yawned like a canyon. "And what happens when people find out? When they see me next to you? They will never let me forget where I came from. They will never let me belong in your world." Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice but making his vow clear. "Then let them talk. I do not care about their world. I care about us, and I will fight anyone who tries to stand in the way." The room seemed to close in, the clinking glasses and polite chatter drowning under the weight of their moment. Lily's hands trembled as she clutched her tray, her heart torn between the sting of betrayal and the undeniable truth that every memory with him still burned brightly inside her. She whispered, almost to herself, "I do not know if I can trust you again." Ethan's reply was firm, almost a plea. "Then let me earn it. Give me one chance. That is all I ask." Oh. And in that crowded fundraiser hall, Lily realized she stood at a crossroads. To walk away would be safer, easier. But to stay, despite everything, might lead to the kind of love she had never dared to dream possible. The night of the fundraiser ended in silence between them. But silence could not erase what was already written in their hearts. Days passed, and Lily wrestled with every memory, every moment, every word Ethan had spoken. She remembered his lies, but she also remembered his kindness. She remembered the betrayal, but also the way he had stood in front of danger for her. Finally, one evening, she walked into the restaurant where it had all begun. The same chandeliers glowed, the same tables gleamed under soft lights. Ethan was already there, waiting, seated at the very table where she had once sat by mistake. Her breath caught when she saw him rise to his feet, his eyes filled with hope and fear all at once. "Lily," he said softly, "thank you for coming." She sat down, her voice unsteady but clear. "I cannot forget that you lied, but I also cannot forget that you cared when no one else did. I do not need your money, Ethan. I just need to know that I matter." He leaned forward, his voice breaking with emotion. "You matter more than anything I have ever built, more than any name or fortune. If it means losing everything else, I will choose you." Oh, for a long moment, they held each other's gaze, the air thick with the weight of decision. Then, slowly, Lily reached across the table, her hand finding his. The room around them faded, just as it had on that first night. But this time, there was no mistake, no misunderstanding. It was a choice, her choice. And in that moment, with their hands entwined across the table where fate had first intervened, Lily realized that sometimes the wrong seat leads you exactly where you are meant to be.